There we go.
Oh, there you go.
All right, thanks everybody for coming to today's meeting, which is June 18th. EDIC call to order. Now, no, you probably printed the right one. I made two mistakes on this agenda, but Mary Ann Giza, the assistant clerk, caught the important mistake. My agenda says May 21st. She corrected it for the proper posting. So a couple of people, other people noticed it as well. So that was my first mistake. My second mistake is number 5 and number 6 should be, in my mind, ordered oppositely. I like to do number 6 before number 5. I'll tell you why when we get to that.
Okay.
So now Gwen did the minutes again, and does anybody have any suggestions, edits?
Great job.
So then,
Gosh, thank you.
They must be getting close to setting a record for fastest turnaround time, I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
Within 2 minutes.
So,
Make a motion to
Great.
accept the minutes.
Second.
all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so minutes are accepted, there's no one here for public speak. Jeff, you have anything to mention other than redevelopment agency?
I guess I would like to just say that the downtown strategic planning workshops start tomorrow night
That's right,
at
yes.
6, and they'll be held at Pepin Auditorium, and so I'm hoping some or all of you can attend. And then I took the liberty to email this group the housing
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
grant that got submitted about 2 weeks ago. So it was unbelievable at the conclusion of the last meeting or thereabouts. I was saying we just need a grant funding source.
Yeah, there it is.
And the next day, a surprise grant, a grant that we've applied for before popped up. So the idea of the grant application is to position Easthampton to be taking steps towards housing choice. So that's the state initiative to provide a bunch of new housing units over the next 10 years. One of the things that they are really encouraging is municipalities to consider the accessory dwelling units.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a section that would try to position us to have accessory dwelling units be eligible by right with just a building permit. And then I added, on top of that, the potential to have it come along with a guide, like a homeowner's guide to help. If you don't have to do permitting, you have other things that you would want to be doing. The bulk of it would be a housing needs assessment. So that's the data gathering component about what's happening or what has recently happened, what's happening now, and what is projected to happen with our housing market. That'll provide us the data that we need to move forward. And then the last component would be to do sort of a zoning assessment to look at tools to unlock other housing types. And so it's specifically listed sort of the senior housing gap and trying to identify a couple of our larger parcels that are still vacant.
Yeah, I think the zoning thing is big, Jeff, and I know I'm exaggerating to make my point, but someone who's, 3 feet short of a legal building lot,
Yeah.
and there's a big open lot where infill would be
Right.
appropriate on a street it almost looks like it's missing a house.
Yes.
But it's a foot short of being a legal building lot. Is there a way around that to be
Yeah.
able to put a home in there that fits the neighborhood?
Yes. I think that combined with the accessory dwelling units as well could actually create new units.
Yeah.
And then looking at the zoning to make sure that for the larger developments, we don't have something in there that's stopping or like a disincentive.
Right.
So I feel very good about our opportunity, our likelihood of getting this grant. So I think this group would be like a driving force along with so we have a fair housing partnership committee. So I think the two groups would be the main thrust of moving that forward and through.
I may have, and this may not be a part of it at all, Jeff, but I may have shared with you or this group in the past that I was speaking to a local builder about, why aren't builders today able to put in a development with, 30 or 40 homes at $250,000, which seems to be a sweet spot. If you if a realtor has a home listed at 250 and has an open house, he's gonna have 100 people show up, get 29 full price offers.
Yeah.
So there's clearly a pent-up demand. So I asked him, why can't you put in a development at 250? He said, we can't do it financially, we just can't do it. And he blames it on the stretch code. He said, the house I'm building right now, it's costing me $25,000 to insulate it.
Right. Materials.
And then he started talking about the stretch for electrical, for plumbing, so for every trade, there's this stretch that says you've got to go this much further to make it the way we want it made today. And
What's the purpose of that?
I guess to make a home that'll survive an earthquake or something.
Well, no, I mean, from an aggregate point of view, it has been successful. The energy codes, the energy upgrades, the stretch code, it falls under just more than one thrust, has lowered our energy usage statewide. And that's where the authority's not the right word, but the people who are promoting these, that's where they're coming from. That,
So why not just change the standard instead of stretching to it?
well,
Saying, okay, this is what it
it's
should.
pretty much coming that way.
Okay.
What Tom is saying is, I believe 100%, and that is, especially in this area, the builder sentiment. I feel it's misplaced. Why they have that sentiment is because they're looking at land as being a fixed cost. They don't care that zoning might be driving costs up. The lot costs what a lot costs, and then I have an X amount to work with, and that's something that's in their control. We're trying to address it from the other end, that if we can, lower lot costs
Right.
to a certain
Or
degree.
if we can maximize efficiency out of a lot.
Right.
Incentivize lower cost homes, because
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is that they want to make money, and
Well,
so
yeah.
they have a lot, and the way to make the most money is to build a $400,000 home as opposed to two 250s,
Right.
for instance.
Or Chris, even to make the same money they were making before.
Right.
Right. So if they're, I don't know, what's the spread, Dave, that a builder would typically make on a home percentage-wise? I don't know.
Well, they 20%.
So they make 20%. Well, in the old days, they could make 20% on a $200,000 home. Today, they need to make it a $400,000 home to
Right.
make their 20%. So they're just trying to make the same money they made
Yeah.
before.
It's too bad.
I had spoken years ago to a previous administration about, and again, I'm not trying to use up land, but I keep using it as an example, the industrial lot on South Main Street. So we're waiting for industry to come in. I've only lived in Easthampton for 58 years. We're 58 years, and probably 58 before me, we're waiting for industry to come. My train just went off the track with that
Well,
one.
to
but-
rezone it.
Well, rezone it, but think, I'm looking, I made a comment years ago about city-owned land. And what are we doing with it?
Right.
Now granted, open space where it's appropriate, that's great. But if it's city-owned land in a spot that is ripe for development because it's adjacent to residential neighborhoods, what if the city said to a builder, look, we'll give you the land, but you have to build 10, $200,000 homes and make it work? And maybe not give you the land, but give it to them at a price that makes that break point not a $400,000 home, but a $200,000 home. So the city makes a little revenue, the land's been sitting there forever doing nothing.
Yeah.
Again, there may or may not be spots in Easthampton where it's appropriate to do that. I'm not saying put a house on every piece of land the city owns, but where is the right piece of land to do that?
Right, and I think maybe the big picture is just incentives. That's a great incentive.
Right.
Just take a look
Cut
at
the lot
all
price.
incentives. Yeah.
Get 10 builders in the room and let them bid. You're gonna bid to buy this lot.
Well, the read on the redevelopment agency is sort of steering towards that ability to
Right.
make more decisions based on what the city needs and what areas are underutilized or blight
Right.
or should be made available. It's you know what I mean. It sounds like there's a combination of things that are already existing on that. I mean, but like what you said, as far as non-conforming lots, like I have a non-conforming lot,
Yeah.
and I was told like 3 or 4 times no, but I just kept showing up and saying yes.
Yeah.
So it's like people aren't as tenacious as I am.
Right.
And so, but then you look at my 2 lots, and they're still the largest lots in the
Right.
neighborhood.
Right.
but the frontage is an issue.
Right.
You know.
So if 2 homes could go in there,
Yeah.
with a little bit, with a tweak in the zoning, maybe 3 homes could have
No,
gone.
I think three homes will if they're doing the dwelling, and that's,
Yeah.
we're gonna retire in one of the apartment buildings, but ideally we'd retire in a small home on that same lot.
Yeah, makes sense.
Interesting, it won't apply to the grant that Jeff's talking about, I think because of timing, but, you know, some of you might be aware that Minneapolis has, I don't know the right term, but I don't want to say illegal, but they're eliminating single-family zoning in Minneapolis proper. And like the New York Times today has a big article, but there's, in planning circles, this is coming up, that the single-family zone is starting to be looked at as a detriment. And Portland has an initiative, you know, because partly it's, you know, it's the cycle, you know, land is fixed, and we have these pressures. You know, one of the problems with builders is, so like you take contractors, subcontractors. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize it, but a lot of times their pricing is double their material cost. It drives me nuts because it's so crude and simple. But you know, when a plumber charges you $10,000, his material costs are around $4,000 to $5,000. The builders, though, are making a percentage, and percentage is a mathematical thing. So, you know, when your costs go up, and you want to make a percentage, obviously that's just going to drive the cost further.
Exactly.
You know, if a builder could be guaranteed, just say $10,000, even on a $300,000 house, so that's 3%, right? They wouldn't mind the $10,000 if they could be guaranteed they can sell 10 houses
Right.
for 10, you know, and make 10,000, you know. But our market is not dynamic enough for that. But you know, I think this grant's great. I hope, you know, and with the new blood that's coming to town, because in Northampton, you're seeing right now, inventory is rising. But Easthampton's inventory from 250 is still decreasing, so you can see that the 250 is a number that seems to work with people's incomes and down payments. And if we could, you know, I don't really care what the size is, but if we could build 250 products,
Right.
it would help a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all the things that sort of around the table just got discussed are all barriers, you know, to increasing housing development. And so there's a whole section that, you know, the consultant will identify all those barriers. I think they're not that hard to identify.
Right.
And then the potential solutions to some of them will come out of that. I think the idea of removing the single family zoning is a great idea. I think we'll have to take the baby steps.
Oh, sure.
Because I think out of this, if we can get, you know, an amendment in the next, if we take 12 months, you know, within the next 12 months, if there's an amendment that makes the accessory dwelling units by right, that could have a pretty good positive impact on new units coming online that fit that criteria.
Would that be state level?
No, that'd be local.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that there's plenty of communities that have done that. We made some changes a couple of years ago to the special permit requirements, but even that is still a barrier that we could potentially remove. The timing seems right for that kind of change. In preparing the grant, I did talk to Taylor Real Estate and Canon, so they wrote letters of support for this, and both of them kind of identified the scenario where someone's elder parents, you know, are retiring or relocating, and out of that relocation they can often have, for example, like $100,000. And in the current situation in Massachusetts in general is you might be able to buy a lot for $100,000, but then you would need another $250,000 to build a house.
Right.
So what the two realty companies said is that there's an opportunity for the accessory dwelling units for that person to be able to pay $100,000 to build the unit on an existing lot, and therefore you're actually creating an affordable unit without the cost of a lot or.
And that's attached to the
Well,
main
the
house,
model
or
would
could
be
separate?
attached or detached. Could be a new structure. I mean, we want the most flexibility out of this.
So, as a result of this grant, Jeff, would this come back with conclusions and recommendations?
Yes.
Or, good.
Yeah, so there's there's a housing needs assessment. I asked for a lot. Housing needs assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a match too, so it's actually 45,000, which I did talk to some people who you know have done this before, and they thought it was reasonable. So, housing needs assessment gets us the data barriers and some solutions, and then two really specific things for Easthampton is the actual amendment to make the accessory dwelling units by right, and then the zoning analysis that would be tailored to unlocking
Yeah.
you know, some other.
Is there any reason the amendment couldn't be done sooner? Like, soon?
Yeah, staff, I think, you know, this, without the data, I think the data is
That's
an
what he's been
important
saying
driver.
last few months.
Right.
Without the data, it's really hard to get the.
Right.
Okay.
I think that we will be faster and more successful with the proper study to thrust it forward. That's my professional sort of assessment.
Okay.
We sense it, we know it, but it's not
Right.
Yeah.
written down. It's
And I
Right.
hear you, Casey, I was always about grants, but now I'm understanding that the data drives everything, so you gotta have the data to back it up. You can't, you're right, we live it, we sense it, we know it, but.
Because the data, and then it'll come out with this, you know, to remove certain barriers, here's things to pursue. And when we immediately latch on to that first thing to pursue, the state has been loving that, and I think that there's some willingness at city council to take on a project like that, so.
Yeah, and when you have that data and you have those conclusions and you go to city council to make these amendments, the city council says, no, we don't think it's a good idea. They're bucking all the, it's sort of like saying climate change is just, you know, a dream.
Or people who would be there to potentially oppose it or express a lot of concerns,
Right.
you know, the city council and others will have that data and recommendations to kind of back them up. Exactly.
I have a much higher level question, which is that reading through the grant today, I went down to Wonderland and read a lot of other things that I found on the planning department site. And I want to know how frequently the housing production plan or the master plan progress gets addressed in a, like some of the strategies and goals get addressed like in a line item kind of fashion in a public way, or if I need to just go read a bunch of city council meeting notes or planning board notes or something.
There was an attempt, there was a master plan implementation committee a couple years ago that attempted to catalog the success of, you know, things accomplished, and I think it petered out. I think it was a struggle. So what my strategy has been to take the master plan topics, so they're topical, like, you know, 9 topics, and we're starting to, you know, reinvigorate and start discussions on all of them.
Yeah.
So, your specific question about the housing production, so we're gonna get a housing needs assessment, which is
Yep.
the market-based.
Right.
The housing production plan is our affordable housing plan,
Yep.
which expires next year.
Yep.
So in discussions with Jamie, you know, we think that CPA funds can be used to update that.
Okay.
So I'd say within the next 6 to 12 months, we'll be updating the affordable housing plan,
Okay.
which would then give us the housing data we need to move forward and work on housing. Sorry, I lost my train for a second, but arts and culture
Yeah.
is a chapter in the master plan, and
Yeah.
the visioning workshops that are happening now are also cataloging all the things that have happened since 2008,
Yeah.
and then setting forth the next set of goals. So we're
and
doing
it's
this.
happening this Saturday at the Eastworks, 10 o'clock.
That's right, Saturday. So
Food is
we're
right in the galaxy.
we are doing, so as some of you know, we're doing the municipal vulnerability preparedness grant exercises, and as part of my extra ask for that grant, we asked Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to do a look back for green communities and all the things that the city has done associated with, you know, green energy, sustainability. So we're biting them off bit by bit to kind of capture all the things that we've done with the master plan. So yeah,
Okay.
no one
But
place.
there's no one place.
Sorry, that's what I should have just said.
Okay.
No, that was useful. It's okay to give more than just the yes or no.
Yeah.
Jeff, just back on.
Well, it's hard, like when people don't see the map and the direction of this charter.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
sort of buried someplace, and if you don't see it, you don't know that's what we were aiming for.
Well, when I saw that, I don't remember which one of these, probably housing production has a, in which years will these things happen? And you look at year 4 and go, oh, that's now. I wonder if that's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The implementation matrix on a lot of those often falls off track.
Yeah.
It's one of the first things to go. So
Yep.
there's definitely some work to be done. If I had, you know, more staff or more time, revamping the website and the ability to show people all the things happening. I mean, that's definitely a goal still to help make it easier for people to understand all the things that are happening.
Okay.
Just back on the strategic plan for a moment, the downtown strategic plan. The next one's in July, and then the last one to be determined, I believe,
We have determined a date, so it's gonna be October 9th.
October
And I
9th.
apologize, I should have come with
And
some
July,
flyers for that.
was it July
13th.
July 13th. I can't make tomorrow night, unfortunately. I'm guessing I can make these two, hopefully. Are they progressive, or are they just sort of doing the same thing 3 times?
No, they are progressive in that the first one tomorrow night will be facilitated to sort of, it's a very common planning tool. So the strengths and weakness analysis, desires and challenges.
Okay.
So for the downtown as a whole, and then there'll be a second exercise on the same night to really explore the school properties.
Okay.
And then from all that data and information, the consultants will come back in July and explain what they found, show how their things can be categorized, and what to do next in terms of analyzing costs.
So will
pros
you
and
be able
cons.
to get anything out on the website about each one, just so we're not playing catch up if we miss one along the way?
Yeah, I think
It's filmed, right?
we're gonna have Easthampton Media there to cover.
Okay.
So there's a brief presentation of the project introduction, and then the workshop-y kind of things are when people report out what the groups had talked about.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, they will have some kind of document to capture their findings from the first workshop, and that'll form the basis for the second.
Perfect.
So it's not all is lost if you can't make the first
Yeah,
one.
tomorrow night.
But you've been through these before, so you'll be able to understand that
Yeah.
a lot of opinions and information was gathered there.
Thanks.
Okay, that's great. We'll keep plugging forward. So I like to go on to number 6, the community reorganization, and essentially, I want to do that before we talk about redevelopment agency, because I feel that the next chairperson is going to be, the redevelopment agency might be that person's baby, so to speak. So that person, saying that, if anybody has any hesitation, they can. So, I'm not exactly sure how to proceed on calling for this procedure. Number 1, number 2, as chairperson, I'm not sure, I'm not opposed, I'm not sure if I can vote or not, I don't know how that goes.
I think you
I
can.
believe-
Okay, I know sometimes you're not supposed to, that's fine. So, that being said, I'm stepping down as chairperson. Now,
Could we identify, could we identify the positions that we have to, is it chair and,
Scribe.
yes,
well,
secretary?
you could be the vice chair.
Is there a vice chair?
There hasn't been in the time I've been in on it.
Okay.
No, but, I mean,
I'll bet there's no piece of wording that says you can't have one.
Right.
Right.
And the only reason I'm thinking of it is, the only reason for the existence of a vice chair is to run the meeting in the absence of a chair.
Yes.
Which we've done without a chair, we've sort of just run the meeting by following the agenda,
Yes.
so it may not even be necessary, but,
yeah.
I would think it would make sense to have whoever is scribe be the co-chair, or have
vice chair.
the vice chair, or have taking notes be a job of the vice chair.
That works.
Okay, so, I guess I'll accept, or ask any volunteers.
Or nominations.
Yeah.
I'd nominate Gwen for chair.
Okay.
1 second.
I would too, and I would take over scribe if you took the
Oh,
chair.
that's great.
Oh, God.
Enthusiasm.
We did this today at the Council on Aging this morning, and the hardest position to fill was that one. And as soon as we had that filled, the
It's
chair
hard
was
to
easy.
participate and pay attention
Yep.
to what's being said, to think and type other people's thoughts.
Well, I have that problem.
Basically impossible.
You said you had no problem doing that?
No, I have that problem.
Now you're the scribe.
No, I have to get minutes for the Charter Review Committee for tomorrow night.
Oh, that's awful.
And that last one, we didn't do anything.
I know.
So I gotta watch the whole meeting, and I'm just gonna say,
Make up some minutes.
no,
You could
because,
just put discussion of charter. You legit could do that.
right, because
they
we had
do it.
we had no votes. We had no motions, no votes. And, but, thank God we have the,
Video.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and thank God it's on YouTube so you can pause it,
Yeah.
because Vimeo doesn't work very well. But anyway, how do you feel about that?
I feel okay with that.
Okay.
I like the idea of a vice chair and maybe for more than just when I'm not available. But I don't know what the rules are for city committees.
I think-
And I like the idea of shared leadership in a
I think that
different
you
way.
actually make those up.
I think it's
As
blank,
chair.
I think it's a blank slate. I
It's
think,
standing.
yeah.
A little bit and stuff.
Well, there's certain, I mean, I've seen some where, you know, they strictly follow Robert's rules and others that are pretty, I mean, even on our school building committee,
Yeah.
we're pretty lax on that stuff.
Yeah, I don't think it's required.
Yeah, I think.
I'm pretty bad about those.
I think Robert's Rules of Orders, in my mind, I could be wrong, is, no, I think for the motions,
Right.
the public, open meeting law obviously applies to publication, but I think for that stuff, but as far as the dynamics of the committee, how it works with the planner or the mayor, I think that's open to the chair.
I agree.
Okay.
I think calling a meeting, making sure it gets posted so that we have a legal meeting, making sure the votes are taken properly, and, you know, motions and seconds, and making sure we have a quorum, those kinds of things. But then once the meeting is going, I think it's follow the agenda and
I think so too, and I think if you're not a group who's allocating money or like granting, discretionary permits, so that planning boards, I mean, those boards have to follow more strict
right.
requirements, as long as, like, I think what Tom described is, as long as you meet those minimum requirements for the
That's what
meeting,
we're
I
talking.
think it's pretty flexible.
Okay,
So,
cool.
before I ask for a motion for a vote, I just want to mention one other side thing. As far as our membership, Sarah has left.
She's got a very cute baby.
Oh, does she?
Very good job being a baby.
Oh, yeah? Oh, wonderful, cool. The city asked for an official letter of resignation. I've contacted her twice. I don't know if she sent it in, I assume she has. But, so we'll have to follow up on that. Just,
I think they, in the bylaws that sort of govern most municipal boards, I think there's a piece in there about missing a certain number of
Yeah,
meetings.
so if you
she may
miss-
be out automatically
Yeah.
anyway.
It's not automatic.
No,
If you
that's the
miss three,
problem.
you could make a vote by the committee to remove them, so I'm just gonna motion to remove her.
Oh,
okay.
that's great.
Second,
And, all in favor?
Josh seconded that.
Hi.
Okay.
Perfect.
And then, we can, that'll be in the minutes for Barbara.
Yeah.
And then we can, so we need 2 members to fulfill the, right?
Is that posted, do we think? Because I know.
No, I don't think it has been.
I think
So actually, I fill the what?
Well,
we're 2 members short right now.
Oh, give me 2 more members, yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know who,
Are we a 10-member committee now?
9 I thought.
No,
Yeah.
We only have
we're,
8 right now.
we're 10.
Oh,
But it's
Jen?
We
supposed
are
to
10,
be- We
okay.
have space for 10, but they're only.
Right, and I meant 2 more, it was to fill the capacity.
But if we're moving towards a redevelopment agency, that's only
That's
5.
5, that's
Well,
what we have to talk about.
once,
Interesting.
okay, why don't we get, so we can get into that, let's, I'll accept any motions regarding, a chairperson.
So I did nominate Gwen, but I'll go back and I'll make a motion that we nominate Gwen as chair and Josh as, I know we say scribe, but the official, we can call it whatever
Vice
we
chair,
want.
unless anyone else has desire to be vice chair.
Vice chair.
Don't all jump at once now.
Vice chair / secretary.
Second
Let's be vice chair.
Okay, seconded, any discussion? All in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Sue.
folks.
And then, so, last thing I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna turn it over to Gwen, is
In
that,
fact, immediately.
yeah. Well,
We may not want to do that.
oh, no.
You don't
okay.
waste no time.
Just because it's not, yeah, we may not want to.
But, yeah, good point, good catch. There's, eager beaver here.
Yeah, I would say you should only last the meeting out.
I'll last the meeting, but,
Take a-
right, but Casey raises a good point. As we talk about the redevelopment agency, form is gonna be part of the discussion. Is it gonna be a subset of this? And if it is, then at some point there'll have to be selection. And then, So anyway, did everybody do their homework?
Yes.
I did.
Okay, all right.
I was really
had
happy
a
to
feeling
see
when I
what
put
they-
that on, I was like, wow, this could.
I thought I was gonna be reading 49 pages of text. I'm happy
Yeah.
to see without.
No,
Like,
it
they're like, oh, this is
it really
boring.
boiled
I'm
down
not
to
gonna read
two
this.
sort of
Yeah.
sections.
Yeah.
Yeah, I right.
Like the first 5 or 6 is what meat was.
But that being said, since everyone's got a loose background based on a homework, what are anybody's just initial thoughts and concept of this?
Well, one of the things they pointed out was to assess whether or not we need one.
Right.
Right.
Need
And I sort of, it seems like it's a lot. It's a lot of responsibility.
Yes.
It's a lot of sort of power.
Authority, yeah.
Authority.
Potentially, though.
But potentially, and so it's sort of like, is it a lot of work for just a few pieces of property? I kind of really like the idea. I looked at, I tried to see how many cities had it, and I couldn't find it, but just it seemed like any city of any size has them. So to what extent they act, I'm not sure, but it just seemed like it has teeth, and it's a potentially good thing.
Do we have the backing of the mayor and the city council?
100%.
She was the one that.
Okay.
I don't know what the city council, I don't
Yeah,
think they're
the-
aware of
I
it.
don't know.
A few might be, but I don't think the whole council is.
Yeah, she wrote, I don't know why she wrote to me, but she wrote to me and put me in touch with Jeff Daly, who is with the Worcester Redevelopment Agency. And I wrote to him and said, we're gonna read this for our next meeting, is there something else we should read? He said, yes, go read the entire Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 121B, which is very long. I did not read it. And decide on a project or set of projects you might be interested in before you decide on whether you need this agency for that project, and then talk to him. So we could have him join us at a meeting or something,
That would be
or
great.
have a group.
Because to
conversation
Casey's
somehow.
point, when I kept reading about blight or areas you would look at, I look around and I'm saying, where do we find that?
Oh, I can.
There are a few,
Okay.
but a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there are 2 pieces of property in town.
But there's also other little different things that it seems like
Sure.
they're
I mean,
could be
just think that's
involved
a
in,
good
and
starting
I don't
point.
really, I don't really know to what
Yeah.
extent.
I mean,
Here is a map.
I felt a little uncomfortable when I was reading about the eminent domain. And then when I got to the part, it says you have to really justify
There you
that.
Yeah, I also was
Potentially
uncomfortable about that,
Both
but
sites.
I tempered that with, it doesn't mean you have to do it. You
Right.
know, it is a
And they
vote.
include the Hurry and
Yeah.
Scurry
And
law,
you
for
have to
example.
really
Yeah.
justify it.
But
Well, I think I didn't do my homework. I did not read that document, but I think,
Tell people that in the meetings.
like, we were just talking about the downtown visioning, the strategic plan, and I think there are
Potential.
3 city-owned properties that will need to be disposed of for certain purposes in the next couple of years. So those should be thought about in terms of the redevelopment authority and the ability for the city to have more control over those properties, in addition to others. But I think the schools are a good.
But the schools are an easy one because the city owns them or will own them. Josh mentioned eminent domain, and while I did read this, maybe I didn't read it closely enough. We're talking about private property here. So we're talking about, sure, you want to bring up some properties and we can find them, or in Surrey, the Moriarty building, we can find them. But I'm not so sure we're going to go around as a municipality and start taking property. So
That's not the way
how
that-
does the redevelopment work with
That's
the
not the way
private
that
owner?
I read it. It seemed like there was layers of vagueness, which basically meant you just have the authority to have them move the property along, whether or not it's
Right.
through auctions or whether or not it's through relocation or,
Yeah,
you know, what I mean?
So what if the
It's-
person says, no, I'm fine with the property the way it is, I'm okay, what are you gonna?
Well, then you have I
What's the stick
think
you
then
have?
you have other steps that you can take to.
It depends on how-
convince them.
You can
determine that the authority is to do something with that
I
property.
mean, I wanna be careful about this becoming big government doing something with private landowners.
Well, it's an entity that can be sued,
Yes.
and it's an entity that can sue people. You know, so it's a big deal,
Yeah.
and but it's pre-existing. Obviously, other communities have it for a reason.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean-
to what extent do people use it, I'm not sure.
That was the point I was gonna make. I mean, these things do have, this plan does have a lot of power, but it doesn't have to be exercised, and in fact, it's hard to exercise. One of the things about the eminent domain, though, is if you have a blighted building, then the agency has the ability to knock it down, you know, and fix it that way. It's not like we take a vote of 5 people and say, let's knock that down.
And
I mean,
there's tomorrow.
there's a lot of process.
The part that actually scared me a little bit is it doesn't report to any municipal authority. The mayor or city, it doesn't.
Well, yes and no, you're right, I mean, it says it right here, it does not report, but I have to assume in the initial phase, the mayor has some
Right. the mayor
authority because
appoints.
the mayor appoints. Now,
Right, but once they appointed, it sounds like it could be a loose
Un-
Right, because
Until
the
the
next-
next city election.
next administration changes, they, they could still be in office, so
They
they
could change the bodies around the table, but I don't know if they can affect what those 5 bodies are doing.
Right, and there's a good reason for that, because you have to keep it apolitical. So when the agency, it's just like the Board of Public Works, you know, you don't want to have the mayor sitting on that board. We spoke
Yeah.
at length about that, because then it turns political, like we're gonna fix this street to get some votes there, or we're gonna fix the blight here and get some votes there. So it's a necessary evil being that independent. You know, otherwise it becomes a political.
But I
evil.
assume it's at least guided by zoning and things like that. It's not no holds barred, do whatever you want to do
No.
with this blighted property.
No, and I think it would be prefaced on the discussion that there would be a plan
There's an
or
urban
Yeah.
renewal plan that
Right,
it
and I think
operates
that's where-
solely in service of.
right. I think that's one of the discussion would be a progression which is, you know, is there potential interest in creating the authority? Is there a funding mechanism to come up and create an urban renewal plan? So you have to be guided by the plan. And so my observations from twice removed in Worcester was that the authority was created, they initiated the creation of an urban renewal plan, and then they began to implement the action items in the plan through the
Okay.
authority. So I think I don't want to overemphasize what may come out of the downtown planning study, but if we all agree that the planning study is not going to solve all the problems, but it may create a list of next steps, potentially we could have a targeted set of properties or a concept that would be worth pursuing that could be the urban renewal plan, you know, basis. If you imagine city-owned property, but to actuate a plan, you need that one property next to it as well.
Right.
You know, then you
Or even 10 feet of that property.
Right.
I guess what I was thinking, when Josh said, you know, we don't want to invoke eminent domain every time we turn around, but this body could do something that the city has no time to do, which is engage the owner.
Right.
And go to the owner and say, hey, look, what would it take for you to, what is it going to take for you to
I
make
think
this
they
different,
are
make
in
this
the
better?
business of relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
That I
And
like.
and that's to Casey's point, you know, it's a suable agency, so
Yeah.
you're gonna have to have all your ducks in a row
Yeah.
and make sure everything's done right from a very timid standpoint.
And even
once it's
the
done,
document
it's
says that too.
But what does it say
Even the
about
document said
funding? In terms of, so, you know, taking, sounds scary, but a property that is subject to eminent domain the owner gets fair market value.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in there that sets out the funding mechanism for that? Or without, so my understanding is that you, as an authority, can also, you know, have the financial framework.
Well, we could, it would be able to issue bonds.
Right, so
that's
it's
the problem.
definitely significant.
well, funding,
The plan has to include how financing will work.
Okay.
but see, the funding, now, when you asked about funding, I thought you were gonna ask something a little different, because, as far as, you know, property, you know, like when you said, you know, there's gonna be some bonding, but it also mentions at a minimum, most redevelopment authorities, and at a minimum, most, so it doesn't hold true, consist of an executive director and administrative assistant. That needs funding as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know.
$50 a day and 40 days.
Yeah.
with it.
Now, the other thing is, it says, a redevelopment authority is governed by an appointed 5-member board. So to me, it sounds like the redevelopment authority could be as many members as we think of, but 5 are gonna govern it,
Right.
you know?
Mm.
You know,
Oh,
you know,
I didn't read it that
That would
No,
be
no,
5
yeah.
voting members.
I
Right.
got stuck on that part, but yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that was an option.
So there were a couple things I thought were interesting that kind of tie into this. There was one thing that was really toward the end of the document, and I know in the beginning it says that this body would not be considered like a branch of the municipality and that it doesn't report to the chief executive.
Right.
However, the members of the body would be considered municipal employees, special municipal employees.
Of the governing body?
The members of the redevelopment authority.
Okay.
That was interesting. And I also noticed that as far as the appointments go, there is a requirement that one of the members be a person who is in an approved union from a list of unions. And of course, all members must be from Easthampton. Another member must be a person who is a tenant in a housing that has the oversight of the local housing authority, or is operated by the local housing authority. And a third member will not be appointed by the mayor, but will be appointed by the State Department of Housing and Community Development. So all those things were a little
Yeah, you were
interesting.
on
Fine-tooth
page
comb, man.
30.
I guess I didn't know that.
I missed that too. I think it must have been on
the
a
way
requirement.
that I read that too is that if nobody was available, or if nobody was, then it would then fall into the mayor's.
Yeah, so I read like after 60 days, if a list, because the
Right.
list is supposed to be furnished to
Right.
the mayor.
Right.
If after 60 days, like for instance, the list is not furnished to her, then she can choose an applicant that would be from like a different union or union of her choosing.
Right,
or
that's
tenant
it.
of her
So
choosing.
we would still
Onus
have to
on representatives
fulfill
of
those
important
slots.
entities in the community.
I think it
to
becomes
put
more of a
forth
gray area,
representative.
if
And if
there's
they
no
do not
options
avail
available
themselves of
from
that
those
opportunity,
lists.
that's on them, and the mayor now gets to choose.
Right.
So that must be deeper, Paul, because all I saw, and again, I only went through like the first 15 pages. In a city, 4 members are appointed by the mayor, subject to confirmation by the city council. DHCD, there must be a state, appoints the 5th member. I'm not seeing anything about describing 4 members.
Like
Housing
27? I didn't go that far.
Yeah, I think it's there because that was the bulk of the thing that I wanted to print
So
out.
membership
Wow.
begins on page 35.
Okay.
In a city, so they are constantly vacillating between
City and
city and town. 4 members shall be appointed by the mayor, subject to confirmation by city council. They're appointed to staggered terms, yada yada. 1 member of a housing or redevelopment authority shall be appointed by the department. And then it gets into, good lord. Whenever a vacancy occurs in the term of a tenant member, for example, there are so many qualifications.
Wow.
They do list the very specific unions that they are seeking representation from. And there's, what was the third one? The tenant of
DHCD,
a.
the tenant, yeah. And like if the tenant moves or leaves that,
Yeah.
then they immediately are out of the committee and must be replaced.
Well, I had concerns regarding some of that, but from another avenue. You know, Chris and I have both been on the Charter Review Committee. I'm a member, and Chris
From
goes
the
all.
squatter.
Yeah, but he knows more than I do because he goes all the meetings. But anyway, it's going on fine. But the flavor is, we're reviewing the charter, but I don't know how to say it right because it's not controversial. But there is a definite tenor where city council is trying to assert its authority in all good ways, and also be very clear and transparent. So if the charter review was completed tomorrow, and we went to the chairperson and said, we want to do a redevelopment authority, I know what he's going to say. We didn't address that in the charter. You know, so all I'm throwing out there is the city council is going to have some establishment inertia at first to the concept. You know, I'm not saying it can't be overcome, but they're going to be more like, well, it's not in the charter. And they rely on a charter, you know.
Everything must be in the charter at all times?
Well, I think they're bigger than that, but the initial response is going to be, well, where is it in the charter? Now, the charter has avenues for new things,
Right.
so it's not like we have to overcome those things. But I'm just saying, they're like, well, what do we need that for? I mean, I'm just saying with the city
Yeah.
council.
It just sounds like it's another tool.
Yeah. Well, we have some sales. I mean, once we figure out what we want, I was kind of hoping before I read my homework, I only read half, as like most people. I was hoping for some kind of a hybrid model, but it's pretty specific
It's
what
very specific.
what they want.
But where I was going with that, I'm glad you said the hybrid model thing, because although the redevelopment authority is going to have some sticks it can hit with, I was actually thinking, when you talk about, and Gwen said it best, relationships, you know, why couldn't, and put this aside for a moment, why couldn't a group of EDIC members become a subcommittee that meets with these owners and starts talking about avenues and things we could do?
Especially if we had bonding power again.
But then, well, without this, absent of this, we just said, Chris, Josh, and Dave, you're gonna go meet with the business owners and you're gonna see if we can get them to move something to make this property better than it is today. The problem's gonna come in is when you hit that wall.
Right.
And the owner says, get lost.
Right.
You don't have the stick that the redevelopment would give you. With all of that said,
Right.
if Worcester's had some experience with this, meaning years, not months, I'd love to have the person, Gwen, that you said might come, we might be able to get this person to come to a meeting, and maybe we make it, you know, maybe it's got to be 3 to 5 instead of 4 to 5, and this person comes in and tells us all the pitfalls and what they went through to get it. And I mean, obviously Worcester's probably got 10 times the blight issues that we might have, but the point is that whatever, we can learn from whatever issues they faced going through this, up to and including how they got it through city council.
It might be worth our while for some of us to go over there instead of asking someone to.
We could do that too. We could do that in our great spot at lunch.
And there's definitely, what I can see, there's multiple tracks of activities to potentially embark on, and I think one, going back to what Gwen said, looking at the actual MGL and deciding on, you know, a project or a set of projects. I think all these things are important to do, and then I think one of the important things would be to begin slowly, albeit to identify whether there's an area or a project or, you know, somewhere to focus this onto. And I think without, at some point, without an area or a project or a focus, you will find that there's no momentum or will to.
Well, I think that's what's so good
about
about this downtown planning is it's going to actually do that. And I think, to your point, I wouldn't mind being on part of a 3-way committee that starts to address Moriarty
That
and
relationship building.
Bernie Gall or whoever owns that, you know, and say, short of going through this arduous long thing, this has been identified as a piece of property we'd like to see enhanced as well as the rest of the community. Is there things we can do to help move this along, whether or not it's through, you know, zoning or the tools that we currently have to be able to, you know, parking, housing, and X has all been addressed.
Right, and I think what Jeff said maybe is where I started from when I said if you look around at blight or whatever, I'm also sure there's an area of town that you would say, wow, this is blighted, as opposed to these one-offs in various areas of town. So you wouldn't say Union Street is blighted, but you sort of look at Hurry and Scurry and say, you wouldn't say Main Street is blighted, but there sits that property on Main Street.
Right.
So I don't know that we could ever identify an area of Easthampton that needs, I mean,
I don't think we
maybe,
would need to.
yeah,
We don't have like a slum.
it's more like one-offs.
But I also think that just having that as an organization could produce other good things down the road.
Yeah.
To what they are, I'm not sure.
Well, I think one example could be what you just said is, what Jeff alluded to earlier, we're gonna have some public properties that we need to, and right now, the model is the disposal process.
Right.
But maybe if we had this redevelopment agency, we could be soliciting, we could be doing a better job soliciting the next purpose and getting, you know, whatever it might be.
What are the steps that we would go by to establish ourselves as such?
First, you see if there's a need.
Well,
Yeah,
okay.
you have a need, and then you have your urban renewal plan, and it has to be approved.
Right.
And
Now, we don't need a grant to
go
figure out
from
if we have a
there.
need, right?
Well, but I think
It's pretty-
you know, I've never participated in the formation of one of these. I've
Yeah.
seen that, I've witnessed them function. I think it's a gigantic undertaking. I think to come up with an urban renewal plan is something that you'll need you'll need some fiscal support and some guidance professionally to establish that plan and the goals that it would establish. So I think you're definitely looking at a longer term project. But, you know, through the downtown visioning workshop, maybe, and I'm not presuming that it'll be that way, but you have a relatively limited size, you know, 3 parcels of limited size.
Yeah.
That's what the city controls. If there's a grander vision of something more significant that requires looking beyond just those parcels, then you may at least see the potential project or the area to focus attention on, and then kind of see if there's value.
And that's the part I'm not sure of. So even if we found, and that was my biggest question right out of the gate, was need when we talked about it here. If we found a dozen properties in Easthampton, like Hurry and Scurry, does that rise to the level of a need for a redevelopment authority?
Yeah, I wonder, and I've been kind of batting it around my own head, which is the Main Street, Union Street, and somewhere else, you know, these 3 kind of distinct properties, whether that's constitutes a plan or whether the plan has to have a geographic area attached to it. So I don't know, like there might be another mechanism to pursue, you know, 3 distinct troubled properties that would be different than here's an area that we believe, you know, we would want to focus, you know, attention on over the next 10 years on redevelopment or.
Well, I look at Ferry Street, and then if we had this, you know, committee, would they have stepped things up to make it happen? Or is it better that it's just more organic to find the right economics person to come and take it? So you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like,
My gut feels the organic is the way to go for something
right, if
like
we
that.
forced something on Ferry Street 6
Yeah.
years ago,
Yeah.
and it went to auction or whatever, would that have been the right solution?
Right. But again, if I look at some development in Easthampton, residential, some of it happened, well, I might call it blight, the 2 properties that were next to the bank on Main Street.
Yeah.
Once public attention got focused on that, there was actually press, once it opened it up, we drive by Hurry and Scurry every day. You don't see it anymore because it's just part of the landscape. Unless you make a point of looking, you don't see it anymore. So if you brought it to a head, if you brought it to, you know, public discussion, public issue, does that help with a conversation with the owner to say, hey, what can we do? Could you at least take it down?
Right. Well, I can almost guarantee that through the exercise, especially tomorrow night, you know, strengths and weaknesses of Union Street.
Right. It's
You
going to
know,
identify.
it should be identified as a weakness, something to have on a list, you know, so that what can be done about Hurry Scurry, what are the options, or what's the community's sense of that? I mean, I think that, you know, I think that one's, I think Moriarty, I think the vacant parcel up on the top of Main Street next to the Shop Row.
Yep.
I mean, I think there's a couple clear property, or D&D Auto. I think there's going to be a couple that kind of come up through these exercises tomorrow that might be really informative to whether you approach the property owner directly, you know, Plan A, Plan B, or you know whether like something like an urban renewal plan would be Plan C or something down the road.
And it's
I think
hard
very
when,
well.
you know, you have somebody sitting on a piece of property because they don't need it financially, and the longer they wait for the bubble and
Right.
find the right time to sell.
Right. But I like what you said, Casey, about organic versus, I mean, maybe this is just more than we can bite off right now, and maybe the organic method of a subcommittee of this group who feels comfortable reaching out to some of these owners and just starting a conversation.
Yeah, I just don't think that just seems like a pretty immense project, and I don't feel like there's anybody here that's spearheading, has that energy to say there's enough things that we'll be successful at that says we're going to invest hundreds of hours of time.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that it's probably a good time to mention that I don't see how this integrates with EDIC directly.
Yes.
Certainly we could have some cross-pollination of membership, but
That's true.
there's just no way to concurrently run EDIC and this as one
And there's
group.
nothing in that would require the dissolution of the EDIC.
Well,
Unless
I didn't
unless
think
it
that
was
was even on the table,
And
but
there's no sense of urgency with this, but if there was some need that was clearer, maybe
Yeah.
perhaps, then the EDIC would be the appropriate body to recommend this process unfold to pursue that need. I mean, I think that's where the EDIC would be a driver to push it towards initiation, rather than the EDIC becoming the development authority and you know, revising itself.
So that being said, is there a way for the EDIC to have a little more teeth?
So, yeah, I was gonna mention that, my understanding is EDIC used to have bonding
Okay,
authority.
that was the IC part of it.
So
industrial
what
commission.
happened?
Never, ever used it?
No, we did once.
Early on.
Not us, not in the 1996 on form, but the O'Neill Street, 1973 or 74, when O'Neill Street was developed, the existing industrial commission bonded with the state for the sewer and infrastructure for O'Neill Street. Frank Syack and Henry Matowski, they were on our committee in 1996 and they got off. They had that authority.
Yeah.
I mean, but from 1973 1996, nothing happened either.
Right.
But so it did have, but there was,
So the only thing to double check would be whether any of the legislation or general laws changed
I see.
out, like maybe, and I can just hypothetically say, maybe the IC part changed to the redevelopment authority, or maybe the IC part still exists, and maybe that's something else to.
You mean at the state level?
Yeah, or
Okay.
through, yeah, so that was a while ago, so I don't know
Yeah.
if maybe they can, like, the regulations often change and get consolidated, so that would be worth understanding if the IC, whatever the authority that was, still exists, because maybe that's the other way to.
Right, because
approach this.
maybe we still have bonding power, and the thing is, all these powers with the redevelopment authority, they all lie in city council and executive hands anyway. So if EDIC had bonding powers and cared about certain things, we could put the time in to basically do the work of city council or executive, hand it to them, and hopefully, if it's a good cause, get it done.
I guess, Chris, I'm thinking the primary, and there's probably a dozen more, but the primary purpose of bonding might be to have the ability to pick up that property if you were gonna go the eminent domain route. Because to Jeff's point, you
Yeah.
gotta pay fair market value.
Sure, but
Or provide infrastructure.
I think
Something
probably,
else, like Ferry Street,
Right.
you know, I mean, and we did it to grants, obviously, but maybe,
but I think that the city would have the ability to go to like land court and pursue an eminent domain anyway if the cause was right.
It is,
Am I right?
but their issue is coming up with the money to buy it.
No, I know, but if we had bonding authority.
Right.
Which we don't know if we do or not,
Right.
then we can work in tandem with the executive in that and bond it out. I don't know.
But even that, I don't know, I mean, bonding is a nice way of saying borrowing.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we can incur debt for the city. Ultimately, city council must have to approve that.
I think that that was one of the things about EDIC that
I don't know that we can
that we had some
unilaterally,
autonomy.
we could unilaterally create debt for the city.
So when you guys did that on Ferry or O'Neill,
oh no, that was 1973.
I know, but
No, it was different then.
Well, it was also, I mean, they worked with the selectmen, I mean, I'm sure the selectmen, someone probably created that committee in order to do that, you know?
no, I understand. But when you bonded that money out, maybe, I mean, it's a long time ago, maybe you don't remember, but was that town debt or was that the EDIC debt? And it was EDIC's job to recoup
I have
that
no
debt?
idea, I was 10 years old, so
Yeah, I don't have, but to your point, Chris, I don't know, where would, you know,
I'm assuming
EDIC,
town debt.
Yeah.
EDIC doesn't have,
And I'm assuming town meeting might have something to do with it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
EDIC doesn't have revenue to repay debt.
Well, that would be part of the bonding process, right? To establish a plan to collect the revenue.
This
Although,
seems like a task someone.
yeah, this is totally valid.
Find out.
Right.
You know, I'm just,
What is the story?
I mean, if EDIC had bonding authority, there must have been a mechanism. I guess it has to be looked into.
Yeah.
I'd love to see us think about,
Chris, would you like to spend some time on the internet
I will.
with Massachusetts general law?
I will.
Yeah. So,
If it exists any.
121B might be a good start,
Yes.
but then.
You're gonna
then
need a weekend.
The equivalent is whether there's the industrial commission parallel process or some
Yeah.
other process, which I don't know how to do.
you could probably, I wonder if Barbara would know that.
She may.
May still know that, or be able to research it real quick, if we still have bonding authority.
Yeah, I'll shoot her an email.
so what's interesting, if you take I mean, reading through the redevelopment thing, you could take it to to mean that like a redevelopment authority could look at a parcel of land, any parcel of land, and say, well, this is not being used, and we have a need for, let's say, senior housing in our community, and we're gonna take that land or compensate the owner of it, and we're going to bond out or take out loans and hire contractors who are going to build senior housing, and we are going to own senior housing and pay back the bond with whatever income we can get from that. And it will be considered public property because the municipality owns it. You know, and I was thinking like, okay, how would people in the city feel if that was something that was up for discussion? Do we want to give the municipality this power?
That's a heavy lift, but I think that the easier way to do that would be, and I'm not advocating for anything here, but you do the eminent domain with the bond buying the property, you own the property, but then you bid it out to developers to make what you want with specs and
Yeah,
stuff.
you know, it's
That might be an easier lift.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying that that would be an option.
And that's
It
how
would,
you,
absolutely.
that's how you recoup money to pay off the bond.
In theory, right.
So, and you might even sell it for profit, and the money goes back into the general fund.
And I think that it would have the ability to maintain accounts, right?
Yes.
But it sounds to me though,
Yep.
in the end, is the need is we just want to be able to move things forward. And how should we do it? With a redevelopment agency, or a hybrid, or energy? You know,
Tip of the iceberg.
because like the Boston Redevelopment Authority, they have these powers. I think they have them even some more. But typically, a developer approaches them for the grace to do a project. The you know, Boston Redevelopment Authority, you know, I'm talking about a major international city, you know, might get involved with some of the logistics, but basically the developer goes in and says, we will do X, Y, and Z for you if we can get A, B, and C. You know,
So they're just
the
helping.
New Jersey Redevelopment Authority is in the developer's pocket. It's a whole different story. You know, it's on the shady side of real estate, where they will take your land, and you know that's the way it is. Obviously, we're not going to do either model. Probably we're just much smaller, but you know, it's part of being relevant and helping moving things along. So I don't know what else to mention about it other than you know, ask questions and do some homework.
Do we want to set something up with the person from Worcester?
I
Either
would
us
recommend one more. I would recommend trying to have one more potential meeting of this group.
Okay.
Yes.
Just
I
to
agree.
see.
I'll go back, do a little
Yeah.
bit of research.
So also we should have Nicole in on that discussion as well, probably.
Yeah, she's the one that sort of planted the seed, and
Yeah.
why? What does she?
Right.
Yeah.
Does she know things that?
Did she say Westfield had this?
I believe Westfield has one. Yes.
Let's make sure that she can
I
come
mean,
in.
maybe we could talk to somebody close at all. Westfield.
Yeah, that would be easier, right?
And also a little smaller city.
And exactly, it might be bigger than us, but it's a lot smaller than Worcester.
Well, interestingly, the name that you had mentioned I know that the name Jeff Daly he's a consultant who's also assisting the developer of One Ferry Street, who has offices in Westfield. So I don't know if he helped form the Worcester Redevelopment Authority or is on it, but I think he is actually a little bit more local than Worcester.
We realize.
Okay.
So I don't think I mixed up at all, but I would just observe maybe one more meeting of this group before you invite someone. I think
Okay.
that
And I
might be
think
a
we should
little.
make sure that the mayor's here when we have our.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly she will.
Hey Jeff, from a practicality standpoint, you said that you witnessed some things that a redevelopment authority did. What were those things?
Well, again, I was very removed from it as working at the regional planning agency in the office is in Worcester, and I mean it's a gigantic project, but Worcester's urban renewal plan encompassed the properties that are going to be the Worcester Red Sox stadium. So, you know, I was involved in a parking study for the city of Worcester, which they then basically just tossed out because then the stadium became a thing. But they are currently in the process of acquiring all these properties that would amass to locate the stadium. So it's not a great example because it's not what we're looking at here, but I'm sure that they, in their urban renewal plan, they have acquired or developed smaller parcels, which would probably be what we're looking for.
But for us, an example would be to take the single-family houses that are on Cottage Street.
Right.
Right. Wouldn't that be better use for downtown business if that was a larger.
But you seem to be saying
And I
that,
really
so,
hate to, like, yeah, because the triangle, so from the Brass Cat to Maple Street, you know, just, no one has proposed this, and I don't know if even the downtown planning study will come up at this scale, but that would be like an area that could be, you know, you would then generate a plan of the city's desires for that area, and then the renewal authority would be able to then make stuff
I think
happen. Rather,
so
you would be driving the bus rather than waiting for a developer to potentially acquire land and develop something of
So
of their own
potentially
fancy.
you could buy some sort of row housing converted to shut storefronts. Would the authority be able to still maintain ownership of that?
Those are good, I don't know. Yeah, I don't
Which,
know.
I mean, could you imagine from the convenience store, and I think it's about 5 single-family homes, or maybe 1 or 2 is multifamily, what that would do to Cottage Street if you
Right.
simply, traffic went
Yep.
past the school and behind it and was one way. It's like when Charles Street on Beacon Hill went from 2 ways to 1 way, or they switched direction, it just
Yeah.
completely became a walking part of the city, and slowed everything down and made it much nicer, and traffic just averted Beacon Hill, and, you know,
Yeah, and just one last thing, I don't know if it's urban renewal plan or redevelopment authority or what it is, but Worcester is definitely on the upswing right now. It's definitely coming back.
Yeah,
A
they've
lot of
had
areas.
a lot of development, which is,
It's-
I
it's
think, why the mayor
dominoes.
gives
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
this
preference.
Springfield's coming
Somebody
back,
starts doing
you know, in our lifetime, Holyoke.
Yeah.
okay,
We adjourn.
Kidding.
so,
Sooner than
hold
later.
on, hold on.
I was there today.
Does anybody have anything else?
Yeah, the next meeting is not July 15th, it is July 16th, which is the Tuesday.
Okay.
3 mistakes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ann.
Going out with a bang.
Can I bring up things to think about for next week, and maybe they're completely, you shut me down. Taxation for nonprofits in the city, is there any leeway on conversations with that? I have 2 churches on my street. They don't use the church to the potential, they have a lot of land mass.
So
Interesting, okay.
you'll notice that they're starting, what is it?
I have to excuse myself, because I had to break for the planning board meeting.
Yeah. I didn't-
Have you noticed that they're looking to start attic sales or closet
Okay,
sales?
yeah.
Can I propose
That's to
that we
make
not,
them more of a nonprofit.
maybe instead of having the discussion
I'm
now?
with you though.
Yeah,
Why
I
don't
think
you-
let's raise topics, we can put.
No, but you-
them
no, no.
next
So
time.
this is kind of, and I guess the Brewers Court, the whole street going towards Wilson.
Oh, Brewster Court.
Brewster Court. You know, and just sort of like, what do those things mean as far as economics for the city?
Well, we can, we can put on her agenda.
She's
Right,
got
that-
them already.
That's what I just wanted to
Just real quick, let's adjourn and we can have a conversation
All right,
on the way out the door.
motion, do we adjourn this meeting?
I second.
Very good, thank you.
I shouldn't have said we have a conversation after we adjourn, because that sounds like
Well, we're still recording now.